All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to George Croft's American Music Show. This week, we got the chance to sit down with Bruce Wawrzyniak, who is the founder and president of Now Hear This Entertainment. And they are a publicity and artist management agency that's been helping artists further their careers since 2004. And Bruce is also the host of the Now Hear This Entertainment podcast, and he has been so for the last 11 years, talking to artists and authors and people coming up in the entertainment industry. And it was great to get a chance to sit down with him and pick his brain about some inside questions. So please enjoy this interview with Mr. Bruce Wawrzyniak. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by the Lighthouse Barber Parlor here in Marysville, California. I am an absolute snob when it comes to picking a barber shop. I love to walk in. There's a cool vibe. Usually there's a free beer in the fridge. There's cool stuff all over the walls. The guys are great, good conversations, and they don't charge you an arm and a leg. And that's what I found here at the Lighthouse Barber Parlor. These guys are awesome. So go on in and give them some business and tell them that you heard about them on the show. And thank you very much to the Lighthouse Barber Parlor. So, Bruce, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. And my pleasure.
Yeah, you've had a eventful weekend here, it sounds like, at the Writers' Conference.
Yes. It's been interesting for me to do my podcast and talk about the fact that I was coming to this and have to single out that it's writers of books, authors, literature, not songwriters.
I tell you, because when I heard it, I was like, is there a songwriters conference in San Francisco? That just got past me somehow. Like I started Googling and I was like, oh, right. Oh, yeah. It helps when you clarify. But yeah, so I think, like I said, I was so excited to get to talk to you because, that side of the industry, getting into like management and kind of what artists can do to kind of help themselves out. It's all kind of a black box for the artists when they're, just getting started. And I think it's cool that you're willing to sit down and kind of share some of your
100%.
secrets.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Yeah. So how did you get started? So your main title that you say is you're a publicist, right? Is that kind of your main flag that you fly?
Yes.
So how did that start from, like, did you go to school for that or did this something you kind of fell into?
Yeah. So there's a couple different answers to that. To your point about did you go to school for it? So my college degree is in media communications. And interestingly, I was somebody that thought I was going to college to be a broadcaster.
Oh, okay.
And ended up doing some broadcasting anyways. And I kind of fell into PR because of the internships that I was getting through college.
Gotcha.
And liked it so much that, in that business, so this was sports, the broadcasting does kind of follow you around, even though you're doing PR. Sometimes you're the PR guy and you're also the team broadcaster.
Gotcha.
But to fast forward to how I got into doing it music-wise, I had taken a job in sports where there was an event coming up and they needed a national anthem singer. And every Sunday in church, I was hearing this girl sing and thought, I should ask her if she would do it. And for that matter, like, she's so good. I wonder, like, what else she sings, away from church. And so I approached her one Sunday and said, do you ever sing outside of church and blah, blah, blah. And on this, oh, by the way, would you come and sing the national anthem? And I thought she was so talented that because I had this whole background, so I really fast forwarded over a whole big part of my career.
Right,
I had worked for a National Hockey League team for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I was vice president of public relations at the league office for the National Lacrosse League.
Wow. And this is on you're doing like broadcasting side of that stuff, or you're just knee deep in the.
This was overwhelmingly on the PR side.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then when I stepped into the Olympic movement, that's when this opportunity came up that I'm starting to describe. And so
Gotcha.
I had this whole basis, this whole foundation of a PR career, where when I went to this girl and said, do you ever sing outside of church? And she said, yes. I said, I'd love to help you in whatever way I could. I think you're really talented. More people need to hear you.
Wow.
And the funny part of that story is that she felt very complimented, but she also was kind of pushing back, like, thank you, but my dad does it for me. Little did we know, the dad was a realtor, and once he kind of got wind of all this, I think he probably went to her and was like, if this guy's not offering to get paid, if he's not asking to get paid, like, why are you saying no?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing what I do because I love you. You're my daughter, but like, unless the guy wants money, like, let's give him a shot. So eventually, I don't want to say I wore her down, but I did ask more than once.
But persistence worked, yeah.
and I started having success for her, and we were getting results. I mean, yeah, well past, sure, she did the national anthem, and that was cool. But once I started having results for her, I thought, I think I might be able to make a business out of this.
Nice.
And I was just so inspired by people like you, talented musicians who are really chasing their dream, as cliched as that sounds. And I thought, if there's a way to come together where someone like George Croft is doing all this great music stuff and someone like me that has all these skills, and I can help you chase your dream a little bit faster, like, why wouldn't we do that? And then it was great, because then I was kicking open these doors that the artist might not kick open, or I would politely tap on it, maybe I should say at the beginning. Yeah. And I have found, this is bad business for me to say this, but I have found that when an agency calls upon someone and says, I'm contacting you on behalf of one of my clients, insert his or her name here, they kind of feel like, well, this agency has vetted those people, which is wrong, because George Croft should be able to contact them, and it's still George Croft. Like, why is it different? And I get it. It's because, well, you have vetted your clients, and if we have to answer to 10 Bruce Wawrzyniaks instead of 100 George Crofts, that's what we'd rather do. But it's bad business for me. I should be saying, like, I'll take all the business I can get. I will not take on people who I don't believe in, by the way. There's people who do what I do that give what I do a bad name, because as long as the check clears, as the expression used to go, and my name is on it, so if at the end of the night I put my head on my pillow and I know that it's going to come through in my pitches anyways. People are like, he doesn't sound sincere. Yeah,
that's great, and that I've run into a little bit of that, in my just kind of getting started. There is like a period of time. First of all, I totally understand the psychology behind why venues and certain things like won't get back to every artist, because you have to get over that first hump of competence, because everyone with a Gmail account can reach out to anyone after you Google them for 5 minutes. So I'm sure these places are getting, especially when artists are just starting out, like, here's another so-and-so music at Gmail, and they have to take time for let's say you're some random guy that runs a venue. You show up, you've got 10 of these emails. If you're going to decide to take kind of a financial risk by putting that person's name on the bill, you got to go through, you got to listen to all their stuff, you got to check out all their social media.
I was just going to say, go and watch all those YouTube videos or click on those Spotify links.
Right. Versus, so you can be that guy and then go through all those requests all the time, or that the Bruce Wawrzyniaks of the world are already doing that for you. And if it's gotten past him to you, okay, now not only you can probably make a pretty good bet that artist has the competence to get there, but now you've wiped that off your to-do list. Like, it's all already done. And that guy can just say, instead of 150 George Crofts, it's one Bruce Wawrzyniak. Is like, hey, this guy is already good to go. Like, and you can also give him the extra pitch of like, oh, this brand new artist is exciting, whatever. Like, it's kind of, like I said, while it is frustrating for me to knock on doors and get 1,000 no's, I get it. And it's, that's just,
and then there's also certain places that, for instance, I live in Tampa, Florida. So over at the beaches, there's all kinds of tourists coming to those, let's just call them beach bars. And the guy who is booking the music, he's also having to order the food. Right. He's also having to replace the hostess that just quit. Yeah. He's also having to call the mechanic because the cooler has a problem.
Right.
And so if he's got to sit there and watch YouTube videos or click on Spotify links, he's like, I don't have the time.
It's 30 minutes out of a day that he already doesn't have time for.
Yeah.
And then, so like I said, it's frustrating to be the artist in that scenario, but you can't fault the people, because that's, I can't imagine, and then what's funny about that is if you are the kind of venue that has the kind of revenue to hire someone who does have that kind of time, they're like, that venue can already afford acts that are established. So the graphs are kind of chasing each other. It's like, small venues who can afford to put on small artists don't have the time to vet them, and big venues that have the time to vet them can afford big acts. So there's this gap that you got to find someone like you to kind of bridge that gap and get yourself, on the road.
And there's also a part of all this that has to do with reputation.
Yes.
So if I book somebody onto, when I say a TV show, I'm talking about like a network affiliate, a morning magazine show, and I tell them I want you to have my client come on there and perform his or her latest original song, and now I send that client in there and he or she is really not that great, I've just burned that bridge.
Right.
And now my reputation is such that they see an email come in from me, they don't even bother saying like, I wonder if this person's any good. That's one strike. That's how fast they'll move, is to say, oh, no, not after that last one.
And for you, that's not just that one artist that can't go back. That's your whole catalog of people that aren't going to be able to do that again. If you send them a dud, they have no obligation to keep giving you strikes. Like that's, I could send them a bad performer. He or she goes on and is not that good. And now I have an author client that they go, I know it's totally different, but once you've lowered your tolerance bar, like I think having the reputation of somebody who can spot talent and isn't wasting people's time is probably like an unspeakable value for somebody in your, line of work. Yeah. Once you burn that, I would imagine it's very difficult to get back.
Mind you, I have an example of back home in Tampa, they did a newspaper column about me one time, and somebody read that, an attorney, and he contacted me and said, I got a band that I help out from time to time. They could use your help. Let's all meet. So we all met. And the minute these guys walked in, I just didn't like their attitude. I didn't like, they were using all this profanity in the meeting. And I thought, I don't want to work with someone like this, whether they can afford me or not.
Right.
So sometimes it works the other way, is, my name is on it, and I don't care how talented or interested you are. I don't want your money, because that's not something I want to be associated with.
It's just, I would imagine the headaches that come with that are probably worth avoiding.
Yeah.
Man. So, okay. So you started off with a friend at church that you just spotted her talent and decided to help her out. So did you kind of lean on people that you knew? How did you branch off into accepting new clients, and how did people know how to find you?
Yeah, so back then, I was just kind of focused locally. So I did have somebody at a local recording studio, that I got to know, kind of partnered up with a little bit. The church itself puts on this enormous, it's almost not fair to call it a fair, because it's huge. So there would be talent that would go through there. There was a high school that was doing, Riverview High School is what it was called.
Gotcha.
So I would go to Riverview Idol, and I would either sit in the audience and watch these students come up and perform, or I would get to be a judge.
Gotcha.
And I'd see them, and then I would leverage that to find what other events are happening in the area where I could say, well, I was just a judge at Riverview Idol. I'd love to come and be a judge at your event also. Yeah. And it was exposing me to more and more talent that was out there. And then you start, it's just like a spider web. It just keeps growing. And the next thing you know, you're at an open mic in town, or you're at some venue where some of these people who are finding their way, they're performing. And so there was a girl that performed at Riverview Idol, didn't even win. And I thought she was so amazing that I approached her. And we went on to this amazing, oh my gosh, I don't know how many years we worked together, but we went from that all the way to, I had her booked in the House of Blues inside Mandalay Bay on the Las Vegas Strip. She ended up moving to Los Angeles at one point. I got her booked at the Mint. We would go to Nashville a few times. I'd get her booked there. I started leveraging relationships I had. We went to Oklahoma City, and she performed at the Rodeo Opry, which was televised.
Wow.
And it was one of those, are we really going to go all the way to Oklahoma City just to do that? And I said, okay. And so the night before, I got her booked to play at Toby Keith's place.
Nice.
And, then it kind of becomes that portfolio where you're showing people, well, these are all the things I've been doing with her. And then right away they, okay, how do I hire you?
Man. So when you're doing stuff like that, like, have you found it to be like, how much did just the fact that you're a manager, the fact that you're representing somebody, I mean, how much has that greased the tracks as far as like getting artists into stuff like that? So like if you call Toby Keith's place up, you've never, is that the first gig you've ever booked there?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So they don't know you at all.
Right.
They have no reason to answer the phone.
Right.
But you say, hey, this is Bruce with Now Hear This Entertainment. This artist is coming to town for this other thing. Like what's your success rate? That's not the right way to say it, but like, do you get shot down sometimes, or like?
Oh, of course. Of course.
How does that
Yeah.
work?
There's the people that, as you know, that just don't even answer you.
Right.
Which to me is the same as giving a no. Now, granted, people may have never even opened the email. But yeah, for sure, I get shot down. I mean, you're always trying to learn from it if you can, and see why it's a no. A lot of them just don't have the time, and it could be so many factors that you just get so used to, as you get so used to the word no that you just keep moving on, and somebody may surprise you. Gee, I've written to this person 3 times, and then you give up, and it's like 2 months later.
Yeah.
I mean, I've literally had people write me back. I had a client that put out a Christmas song. It came out late. It was like December 11th, 2025. And like 6 weeks later, somebody replied to it. And I went, this was a Christmas song.
Yeah, you missed the boat. Yeah.
But the point being that when you write something off, you never know, someone may come back around after all.
I mean, even for me, I thought it was funny. I received emails in January they were responses to emails that I had sent the February before, and they were like,
wow.
"Oh, hey, we've got some openings now." It's like not a hey, we'll reach out when there's availability. That's like you fire off an email into the abyss and it just goes away.
Yeah.
And then almost a full year later, they're like, "Oh, what's your availability?" And it's like, "Oh, great!" It's like little Christmas presents.
Yeah, and here at the Writers Conference, I just finished putting on a master class, and somebody asked me, when I send off a pitch to someone, how often, or should I follow up? Should I send follow-ups? And I said, it just depends on how much of a priority it is to you. If it's something that you feel so strongly about, right? It's a venue that George has been trying to perform at for a while. Like, George is going to keep going back. I said, here's a little secret for your audience. So I like to use this line where I say, I'm trying to walk the line between being a pest and staying on your radar. That way they can't say like, okay, this guy acknowledges that like this is the 3rd email.
Right, yeah.
But they also say, okay, I kind of admire.
Yeah, that's a good line because when I've written things similar where I'm like, I know you're busy is like not a great. You're stepping in a couple of different potholes with I know you're busy, which is like, you're bugging them. That's what that line means. Or like, I'm sure, I understand your time is valuable, and it's like same kind of thing. But that's a good one. Yeah, walking the line between being a pest and staying on your radar.
Yeah. So good. I told the person in the master class, I said, you can send the first one. If they don't respond, again, you're going to base it on what day of the week it is. If you write it on Tuesday, you're not going to resend it on Saturday.
Right. Yeah.
I said, but maybe after 3, that's kind of it. I said, but the cool thing is if you're just doing it just to see like, hey, let me see if I get a response, and there's really nothing attached to it. It could be 4 months later, and keep in mind, this is a literary writers conference. I said, maybe it's 4 months later, and now your book is actually out. Then you contact them and you say, hey, my book came out yesterday. I'd love to blah, blah, blah. And that kind of gives you that excuse of, number one, it has been 4 months, but number 2, something has changed since the first one. Yeah.
And I think there's also a bit of psychology there where like if you, like as a musician, I feel like if you go to somebody and you either get even a yes, and then you go back to them later to if you want to play that venue again or whatever, sometimes it's like, all right, well, if you haven't done anything new and you're just the exact same act again, your odds of getting picked up again are lower. Like you got to keep moving because I feel like people want to help when they feel like there's momentum. It's like you don't want to get involved with helping somebody, especially as a venue, like hiring people, if you feel like you're dragging them towards the success that they want versus, you can be a little piece of a puzzle that they're already putting together. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of not to get too philosophical, but I think they call it the Matthew principle, which is, to those who have nothing, everything will be taken. And to those who have everything, more will be given. It's like, it's just the snowball of once you have momentum, more people are willing to help. And I think that I would imagine that just continues on at every level of the game.
And there's also the part of it, where you do get the people that will say to someone like me, well, how many people is your client going to bring in? So if they give you a chance and say, well, we'll try him out once, and George goes in there and they go, George didn't bring anybody, then you're right. I'm not going to go back to them a month later and say, hey, we had George in there a month ago. Can we get him back on the schedule? They're going to say, what's in it for us?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Versus if, hey, last week a new album came out. Right. It'll kind of or might give you a mulligan.
I like to kind of use peer pressure and say, he just performed at insert respectable venue here. We'd love to have him at your place, or we'd love to have him back, or whatever. That way they go, oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like I said, I feel like that's tying again to like, okay, well, if he was competent enough to play at that other spot, like it's not just a competition thing. It's kind of like, all right, well, if he pulled that off, then, you know.
I have always said that the guests that I get on my podcast, that I feel like they look at in the email that I'll send to someone saying I'd like to interview you on my podcast, I list off some of the big names I've had on my podcast, and I want to believe that they're reading that and saying, well, I mean, if it's good enough for those people, I can be on his show too.
Yeah, a little inside podcast baseball for the audience, but like that's been like I said. So my show up to now, all of my early episodes, I mean, I've been doing this show for a year, and you know, probably 3/4 or more of those episodes are just me talking about music history from whatever artists that I picked, and just because I wanted, you know, to do something, get content out there, and it's so much fun to dig into old stories that like I'm learning, you know, stories about some of my musical heroes that I would have had no idea about if I didn't have a reason to go digging and reading, you know, or listening to autobiographies and watching YouTube interviews, and you know, and so that part's been really fun. But yeah, when you start getting names on that people recognize for interviews, the snowball effect of that is just gigantic. So I think it's kind of, you can succeed both ways, but yeah, as soon as you get that air of competence and people are, you know, you're worth so-and-so's time. I'm you know, Bruce Wawrzyniak's time, you know, then the snowball continues to build, and that's, you know,
it's interesting that you mentioned about music history, because when I interviewed Roy Orbison Jr. for my podcast, I told myself, Roy probably gets asked all about his dad all the time. Yeah. I'm going to make it a point to not ask about his dad. I want to ask about Roy Orbison Jr. So I'm really going to stay committed to just talking about him and what he's doing. And all he wanted to do was talk about his dad. And I thought that's fine.
Yeah, because if they want to.
Yeah, I went in with the right attitude. I had a game plan. I had a strategy that I was being respectful. But the minute that he wanted to make it all about his dad, I thought, hey, the show's about the guests. It's not about me. So go ahead.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I've met a couple, like I got to spend some time with Merle Haggard's sons at a music festival this summer. And it was kind of the same thing where it was like, you know, everywhere those guys go, people are asking about their dad and telling stories about their dad. But when you get to just hang out with them and talk, they're like super interesting and funny. And like, you know, they've got their whole stories going on. And so that's, you know, you feel, at least I like, and not just them, but like other second generation stars kind of, it's like, you almost feel bad for them, that it's like, man, some of these guys are wickedly talented and they would have made it on their own anyway. And like, you know, there's a pile of stories there that people don't get to because they're just like, oh, you're so-and-so's son.
I have found, I had Waylon Jennings' grandson on. Oh, nice. I had Travis Tritt's son. I had Johnny Paycheck's son.
Yeah, I heard all three of those. Yeah.
And I found that a publicist, I don't remember which one of them it was, but one of them told me in advance, like, don't ask about whoever it was. Like, if my client, if the guest goes there, that's up to him. The other two, I know Travis Tritt's son for sure, like Tristan Tritt, he had no problem talking about he was very complimentary and said that, you know, of course I owe it to my dad. My dad has helped me a lot. Yeah. So it is kind of fascinating when you say, all right, are we going to be doing some history here, or are we kind of just going the direction of what you're up to?
I think what you're trying to avoid is the, like I can imagine like some like big morning TV show or something, and you know nothing about the guest you're about to have. You do guests every morning at 9 o'clock or whatever, and all the producer tells you is, hey, we're talking to Waylon Jennings' grandson. Ready, go. And that's all the information you have to go on. And it might be real, and like that would lead you to assume the only reason he's there is because he's Waylon Jennings' grandson. Right. So, and then boom, the questions would just steer that way immediately.
Yeah.
And if you're, you know, I mean, especially like Shooter Jennings is like, I feel like he's achieved an enormous amount of escape velocity away from that stuff just from his, you know, body of work. But I would imagine in the early days, you walk into 10 of those interviews and by the end you're like, all right, ask me about literally anything but my famous family. Like, you know?
And you and I, as podcast hosts, we can relate to what that would be like if someone just says, all right, you're interviewing Waylon Jennings' grandson, and you go, so what was Grandpa like? Right, what was that like to grow up with him? It's like, oh boy, here we go. And that's why, by the way, when I started my podcast, I told myself, as a publicist, like, what would I want my clients to be able to talk about? In a perfect world, Like I would want this to be a long form conversation.
Yeah.
I would want it to be really a nice feature and not the 5 to 7 minutes with the predictable questions.
Yep.
And so that's kind of how I structured the show was, all right, what would I like my clients to be asked about? And then I started incorporating more, which was, okay, for the up and comers who are in the audience, what questions do I know that they have that, I would get a guest on that would talk about having a song placed in film and television. And I'd say, you just recently had your song insert title here placed on insert show here. Congratulations. How did that come to be? Yeah, that was really great. A really great accomplishment. I was so excited. Wow. It's a definite highlight. It ranks right up there. And I'd say, I'm sure it does, but we have audience members who are up and comers that want to know, how did you get that to happen?
Right, yeah. What are the?
Do you know the music supervisor? Did you have a connection to the show? Did you just submit it blindly? And you can almost hear the light bulb flicking on and them going, oh, he actually wants to know like mouse clicks. Yeah. And that's what I was thinking as I started up the 12 years ago and I started the podcast. I thought people want to know mouse clicks.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like podcasting has really changed the game as far as that stuff goes. Because when you're not up against a hard time limit and you're actually interested in what the people are, you're talking to, like, when you can pull on all those little threads and like, there's so much helpful stuff in there that you would just blow right by if you were, oh, sorry, hold that thought. We're going to a commercial break. And then, it's over. And
5 to 7 minutes of the predictable questions.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you go, I guess they mentioned that my song got placed on such and such a show, and maybe people will go watch the show and like the song.
Yeah. I would wonder, like, I wish there was a computer screen somewhere that could show you the bump in, like, streaming numbers or just, like, general public awareness of, like, doing 10 of those morning shows versus one good podcast that has a good following. Like, I wonder what, like, you're never going to see that number, but, like, I feel like it's a gigantic difference. And that, like, even though there's not like a tangible, necessarily, measurable way to say, oh yeah, that podcast episode got you this kind of exposure. And, you can't measure the X factor.
The one way that you can do it is if that's the only thing that you did that week.
Right. Yes.
You say, I went on that podcast on that day. I did nothing else different that week. Then you go and you look and you go, wow, I got all this attention the day of or the day after. You say, well, it has to be that. Right. We actually did that with an author client of mine where we completely shifted her pitch to something that we had never pitched about before. And I was able to sometime later log into her author dashboard and I looked and I saw this spike and I went, oh, cool. And it took me a minute. And then eventually I went, oh, that was because we started doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, adjust game plans and kind of. So what is? You don't have to go too inside baseball here, but like, is there anything that stands out as in the last few years, as you're as podcast influence is getting bigger and YouTube's been a huge thing for a long time, but as you're transitioning into the current day landscape of how to get an artist going. What's the biggest shift you've noticed strategy-wise going from having to deal with, maybe dealing just with radio stations or just TV? What's your biggest strategy shift you've had to make?
This is going to be kind of you didn't answer my question, but I will say that one thing that has not changed, one thing that you still have to put a priority on is relationships. Yeah. Because it's those people who are, and it's kind of, if you follow the breadcrumbs, it's kind of like the Kevin Bacon game. Right. And I will ask my clients when they get an opportunity that I had nothing to do with it, how did you get it? Because I'm just trying to learn like everybody else. Yeah. Right. So I say, how did you get that? And they'll kind of walk it back. And invariably, it always ends up with relationships. So as much as, things shifting, right? So, all of a sudden trying to tell a client like why it's really important that he or she does TikTok as opposed to years ago when you're like, TikTok, is this an alarm? What are you talking about? Like, no, TikTok, it's another social media platform. Interestingly with social media though, I have been amazed. I've always been vocal for years and years about making sure you're on. There's a difference between being on a lot of them and being on too many. And the too many means you're just trying to be everywhere. And there's that expression, you can't be all things to all people. Yep. If you're not going to keep all those up, I'd rather that you be really good at 4 of them instead of I'm on 8, but I really only keep up 4 of them.
Right. Yeah.
And so, certainly it's shifted over the years. I mean, the whole emphasis on short form video content has been a lot of fun to adjust to.
Yeah.
And I do see those working, and I like those. Am I going to be saying the same thing a year from now, a year and a half from now? I don't know, because
it's changing so fast.
Because on YouTube, people go there conditioned to watch longer videos, but all of a sudden, YouTube does such a great job of laying out the platform that you're looking at long form, you're looking at long form, you're looking at long form. Oh, here's 6 right in a row of shorts, and the next thing you know, you're spiraling into like 5 different shorts in a row. Yeah. So I think those are good, because it does allow people the opportunity to hear a little bit of George Croft's music without knowing I got to commit to a whole 3 minutes and 21 seconds of his video.
Yeah, that's been I've been navigating that for the last, couple of years of like trying to, I think, it's going all right. I think, but the short form, like especially YouTube shorts, TikTok, Reels, things like that. If people see enough of those, they'll go check out the longer version of it. You're basically running ads for your longer videos. And it's like, if it's not the whole song, I don't care. It counted as eyeballs. And if it's enough to grab people's attention and then they go check out the full song, great. But, it's like now I'm starting to get now where, because sometimes you send those shorts off to the void and you just hope and sometimes there is no rhyme or reason for which ones do good and which ones don't. Sometimes you spend a ton of time making that short exactly the way you want it. This is going to be, I got my camera angle changes right. The lighting's great. The mics are good. And then the algorithm just leaves it at like a couple hundred views and you don't know why. And then there's some random, like quality is less, but you got a good take. And all of a sudden that takes off and, there's no pinning down exactly why. I mean, maybe there is, maybe there, I'm sure.
You tell someone I got 4 views on that video and they go 4,000. That's all. No, 4. You got 400. How'd you get 400 views? No, I got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
0, 4.
And then they say, why? What happened? I don't know.
I have no idea. Yeah. And I know. And then the joke is that like, I tell all my friends now that, for the last couple of years of like trying to be really consistent and trying to try different things and, really paying attention to the minutia of each video. My daughter found a cat in the barn and I posted one video about this cat that is like now coming to the family. And then we got another one. And the cat videos just took off and everyone was like, okay, I thought like it was 2 lessons in one. The first was that like, okay, I can get those kind of numbers. Like that's great. The other thing was like, oh, like I thought that it was, I can do the same kind of content and just got to be consistent. It'll start to work. And then you kind of realize, oh no, it is a me problem. Like I got to fix something.
I got to launch a separate cat channel. Yeah, there was actually somebody at Podfest in Orlando in January who suggested that if your long form video is not doing that well on YouTube and your shorts are doing real well, take all the shorts off and launch a completely separate channel that is just shorts, because people are going to keep coming and they're only going to watch the shorts and your long form videos will suffer.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And the other point here is that creators, whether you're an actual YouTuber or whether you're a recording artist or whatever, have to realize that once you hook people in, I love that you use the word consistency because I'm such an advocate for consistency. But once you hook people in, like you better be planning to continue putting stuff out, because that YouTube short, it's basically kind of like a business card. It's like the appetizer menu at the restaurant. And they go, okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm going to your channel because I'm investing in what you're going to do in the future, more so than I am now. Like this got my attention enough, but I want to see what else you're going to do because you have my attention. So if you hook someone in through a pretty good short and then you go,
right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what my next thing might be. And you go, oh, so when's that going to be? I don't know. Like I'm busy. So probably this weekend, forget it.
Yeah. And I know as a consumer, like what keeps me going a lot, like as far as like the consistency end, like even when things aren't really, popping off as much as you want. I know that there are artists that I see, think they're great, and like, oh, that's awesome. And then I don't engage with that video at all. Like it'll just go by me and I'm like, oh, that's cool. When I see that same artist come by a few times, and then I'm like, oh, like there's that, that one's good too. And like, so your brain catalogs the quality
Yep.
and I'm really bad, I might see that artist 10, 15, 20 times and then go, who is this person? Like, and then actually take the time. It'll snap you out of your doom scrolling to actually go interact. But even for me, it takes several interactions just seeing it go by before my brain goes, okay, that's probably worth checking out more of, I guess. And yeah, so I keep that in mind where it's like, man, if I was trying to hook me, I wouldn't have hooked me yet, and I got to keep going. Like,
and they do always say, that it takes somebody seeing something that's like 7 or 8 times, before they're actually going to take whatever action you want them to.
Yeah.
So, I think you do also have to give yourself a little grace. We do put these things out there, and we hope the expression "hope for the best, plan for the worst."
Yep.
And you see it the next day, and you say it's got 11 views. Like, well, you're not an A-lister, you're not a household name, and so. Give it a little time. I mean, the algorithm might, for some reason, all of a sudden boost it when you least expect it. Or you learn from it, you lick your chops, you move on, you go, all right, next one will be better.
Yeah, and I think, too, like, it's, you can't get bogged down in that kind of stuff. Because, like, I think, too, like, by the time the algorithm feeds you stuff, sometimes, I think the algorithm is looking for a larger amount of consistency than people might assume. Because by the time, like, let's say you see, a reel go by and you interact with it, you end up on that person's page and that's their first one, you go like, oh, okay, like, see you next time. Like, we'll see if you stick. Like, even for me, I'm never following someone if that's like their first 1 or 3, even if they're good reels. All kinds of questions kind of come to your mind where it's like, okay, if it's a really good reel and it's the first one I've seen of this artist and it's the first one they've ever posted, my brain says, somebody is ripping off some other artist. This isn't a real page. Like, there's probably some shenanigans here that I'm like...
Or they're paying to boost it.
And so the fact that there's only one, even if it's really good, your suspicions kind of go up and I'm not... But then if you, over the course of, let's say, 6 months, you keep seeing that, so you go back to that same page, oh, sure enough, that was the real... Like, then boom, okay, then we'll interact, we'll follow, we'll do whatever. But you got to kind of... Like I said, for me, I know if I was trying to hook me, it takes me a long time. Like, I don't know that I would have followed me yet in a lot of...
A couple of years ago, I went to a songwriters festival with a client, and she was relatively new to me as a client at the time, and she had a YouTube channel. She wasn't super active with it, but it wasn't her first one. And my point is, I told her before we ever met there, I said, when you travel there, make sure you bring with you some different outfits. I mean, obviously she was going to have her guitar. I said, I've been to this festival before, so I kind of know the area. I said, we're going to go to a couple spots where I'll shoot some pictures. I said, but think about a cover song that you want to do, and we're going to shoot a video of you performing this cover song acoustically just because we need to start populating your YouTube channel. She went, okay. So we showed up there, and I said, did you pick out a song? She said, have you ever seen The Rain? And I'm like, okay. I mean, if that's the song she wants to do, I'm not sure. Like, I was kind of surprised because she's very young and that's a very old song. But I thought, okay, great, let's do it. And we shot it, nothing fancy, put it up on YouTube, and the thing just, oh my gosh, it was like, and her mom was with her. So the next morning, like, oh, your video's up to 1,100 views, like overnight. Really? Next day, your video's up to 5,000 views. Really? Before you know it, I'm contacting them saying, that video has 13,000 views. Yeah. And like, it hasn't even been a week. And they're like, how? Oh my gosh, you're amazing. I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to set those expectations for someone that, oh, Bruce has the answer. And every YouTube video we do with him, it's going to go through the roof. But it wasn't her first one. And obviously, the conditions, the planets all aligned.
Yeah.
And people loved. Obviously, there's also something to be said for, I like her treatment that she did of this song.
Right, yeah. You have to have, you can't be missing, like, quality. I feel like no matter what, you have to have a good quality performance. Like, there's no substitute for that. If you're doing a video, of a performance, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your decisions are around editing or camera angles or whatever. You can't fake the good performance, and that's what people want to see. Yeah, if you have that, you can go a long way.
I think there's a mistake that performers make, which is, we're all our own worst critics, and you do need to keep up inventory on your YouTube channel. And so I would go to a client's performance and I would film overwhelming majority of it. And I'd say, I need you to pick out something from this that you like. And sometimes they'd say, well, what did you like? Was there a song I did that really stood out? And they'd pick one out and they'd go, except, on the second verse. And it's like something so specific that I would say, like, number one, people expect there to be in a live performance. Like, it's not like being in the studio. Like, you're not going to correct it. And so there has to be some authenticity to it. And number two, if you nitpicked like that on every song, we wouldn't have anything to post on YouTube because you'd find a flaw with every performance. So you have to kind of say, can I live with that? Is it just me? Is anyone else going to notice? Because it always goes back to, you never know who might be in the audience. And I'm holding up air quotes because it might be there at the performance, or it might be on YouTube.
Right, on YouTube, wherever it lands. I know. I was just when I was talking to Don Henry about this, where it's like there's also an element of it where, as the artist, you're hard on yourself. Like I said, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like every missed string, every mistimed thing, you flub a word here and there, like it just stabs you in the ear, and that's like all you can think about. And there's just such this vast difference between, I'm over here like, oh, well, that take was garbage. Like, all right, what am I even doing with my life? And then 5 minutes later, that clip is doing great. And it's like, oh, okay. Like it's very, it's kind of calming in a way when that happens, and it's also conversely, like a lot of times you go, perfect, I nailed that one. It took me 15 takes to do. I got it. I'm super happy with it. And it's flat. And
yeah, I remember, my gosh, I think in the second year of doing my podcast, I interviewed, at the time he was a well-known Christian artist. His name is Johnny Diaz. And Johnny said he had a song that everybody knew. Everybody knew the song. And we talked about it, and he said, when I wrote that song, he said, I really didn't think that much of it, didn't really think it was going to do much. And he said, it's the one that you write that you think, this is going to be the one, I'm going to have a hit, I'm going to have a number one, and it doesn't go anywhere. And he said, here's these others. And I've had other guests, over my 12 years that have echoed the same thing, that say, you can't attach to it in terms of, this one's probably not going to, or, oh my gosh, we just wrote there was one exception, which somebody told me about recently, Fred Mullen. He's a producer, and he was working with Dan Hill. And I think it was Sometimes When We Touch. He said, oh, we knew that song was going to be a hit. Yeah. And it was. But, I mean, that's, one out of 600 and however many episodes I've done where...
Well, and also, too, because I feel like that might be a little bit of coincidence, too, because I'm sure there's plenty of artists who go, yep, that one's a hit, and then it's not.
Yeah.
Well... like the X factor of why it was a hit, the story would have been that first story of like, we knew it immediately and it was. And so, well, just because you called it doesn't mean you caused it. Like there's, you could have that opinion and it goes great. You still have that opinion. It doesn't go great. But whether or not you knew it at the time really doesn't have any control over how well the song does. And two, like for me as a songwriter, I think there's been a few that I've written where I am like super into it. And I was like, you're feeling like, this might be the best song I've ever written because you wrote it about something very personal to you. And I've learned that's a bit of a trap because it's perfect for an audience of one, which is me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's, going to relate to people. And that like, versus there's songs where I was just like writing, having fun. And it's like, you still do you make the best song you can, but when it the ones that seem to do well are the ones that land with different people for different reasons. And like people will get different things out of a song and really attach to it. And it's like, oh, like they're having the reaction to that song that I had about my personal song by accident. And it's,
there's something about that. I don't know what it is, but it's not too different from the young people who write about things they shouldn't be writing about because you're only insert age here. How could you have had that experience in life already? And so it does kind of make it tough for the audience to make that connection, especially if it's a live performance, to look at that person on stage and say, it's an interesting story that they're telling, but it's just not believable because look at who's delivering it.
Or it's cliche because, it's like if there's a 16-year-old girl on stage singing about existential love problems, it's kind of like, don't come after me, 16-year-olds, but like, as an audience member, there is an element of like, okay, like this, we know what you're doing. And we all know, wait 5 minutes, you'll feel different about it.
But I'll tell you what, once you look for it, you notice it. I was at the Grammys, and while I was in LA that week, I went to see someone perform who had been on the podcast. And she is young to the point where I'm interested just to see her show. Yeah. But I thought I'm also going to listen to the kind of songs that she's performing to make sure that they are believable. I mean, not that I'm connected to her, but it was just kind of one of those things where you do need to know as a performer that there are people out there listening for different reasons. And one of them might be, I remember I was in Nashville one time and I went to a writer's round and you could hear a pin drop in there, as it should be.
Yep.
And they finished. The next round came up. They did their round. They came off stage. The next round got up. One of the 4 people who got off stage came to the back of the room, and I'm sitting there trying to watch the next round, and I'm listening, and they're doing their thing. And one of the writers who had just come off stage just proceeded to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk to the people at the table over there. And when I could finally see, I'm trying to be anonymous, when the person, I'm not even going to say if it was male or female, when the person approached, because they were cutting through to go outside, I stopped the person and said, hey, you were up in the round before that. Yes, I was. Thank you for listening. I said, oh, yeah, you're welcome. And a little bit of small talk. And then I said, and you proceeded to come off stage and go over there and do nothing but talk the entire time when everybody was silent for you. I said, you don't know who I am. I said, and it doesn't mean that I'm anybody. I said, it's a bad look. I said, and you don't know who might be here. Because this person needed to know.
Yeah.
And I've seen a veteran songwriter at a festival stop his show and say, I'm done. And he literally packed up his stuff because he was so upset that somebody was at the bar yammering away. And I think these lessons need to be taught more.
Yeah, I have seen exactly what you're talking about play out. I've done a few writers rounds in Nashville, and for the most part, they're awesome. Like I love doing them every time I go because it's that you're mingling with your peers and checking out everybody's songs, and when everybody's locked in and listening, it's a great experience. Yeah. But every once in a while, you get somebody that usually it's people that have a little bit of success. They've already had a song get picked up, or they feel like they are somebody a little bit. And man, they go from being part of the experience and being kind of everybody's on the same team kind of a feeling to I'm gracing you with my presence. And then when you get off stage, you're way like, since I'm here gracing everyone with my presence, the guy at the bar wants to talk to me about it. It's like, oh, thanks, man. It's really easy to get off the rails.
I think that's a case of you have to read the room. And so when you're going into a certain venue, this is a writer's round where it's just silent. It's a listening room environment, as opposed to I'm going to do a writer's round, and this is a venue where people will be talking, glasses will be clanging, dishes, silverware, and I can't be bothered by that.
Yeah.
And you just accept it, and you still, of course, you always do the best show you can wherever you are.
Yeah, you never want to come off stage and then stand out as part of the problem. That would be just devastating. Because that would, like I said, I as a writer, I would feel horrible if somebody which is funny because I'm sure what you said to the person, sure you got through to them, because boy, as soon as someone's like, hey, bad look and that was disrespectful to your peers, it's like, oh, I would just be gutted.
Well, and I think you need to walk the line between someone comes over and says, hey man, that was great, I love your stuff, and you go, oh my gosh, thanks so much, and they go, yeah, cool, and you can tell okay, they're done, that's all they wanted. But if they really want to carry on the conversation, you say, man, this means the world to me. Can we step out here?
Step outside? That'd be, that's the way to do it for sure. But like I said, even then it's like those writers rounds are fun, and they're like, you want to stay in there and you want to, keep listening and kind of engage with everybody, and maybe hang out afterwards. Great. But yeah, that's been really cool to see and do the few times that I've been there. Yeah,
and it's always interesting for me as I travel around to see the types of differences there are, from not only one venue to the next in Nashville, but to come out to LA and see what's happening there. There was a client that I had one time. She said, right when we started working together, she said, one of my big asks, like kind of a wish of mine, she said, I've always wanted to perform at the Hotel Cafe. And I'm like, yeah, right on. And she says, but I've struck out all the time. And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, I can't tell you. She said, I don't know how many different times I've tried to get booked there. Like 4, I don't know. It's probably more than that, but I'll just say 4. Ha ha ha. If there's anything you could do to try to get me booked there, I wrote them one email. They wrote me right back and said, when would she like to perform?
Yeah.
And I went, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it shouldn't be that easy, but then you go there and you sit at the hotel cafe and you say, man, this place is so cool. Yeah. When I was in LA a few weeks ago and I went to the Mint, I went, man, this place is so cool. I think there's a lot to be said to getting out to these venues and seeing them yourself as opposed to just looking at it online. Instagram pictures aren't going to do it justice. A YouTube video depends, on how well it's filmed. Once you get in there, you go, wow, this is totally different from what I pictured, and I love it.
Yeah. The one that comes to mind for me is the Commodore in Nashville.
Yep.
Is like, it's a hotel bar. Like it's in the Holiday Inn or whatever. And if you showed me a picture of it, it's like,
this is a restaurant.
This is a restaurant.
Eating dinner in there.
But every time, it's so much fun. It's so cool. Like the whole vibe they have in there is, so what you're saying, it's like you could not have judged that properly from an Instagram post at all. Yeah, it's some of those venues are pretty neat to get to go in. And there's all kinds of cool stuff on the walls from like other writers that have been there, and there's stickers everywhere. And
I think the other part that's fascinating is the audience experience. I think when audiences, the uninitiated, when they hear about a songwriters festival, I think that word festival carries with it this mental image of like an enormous stage and a throng of people, farther than the performer can see on stage. And that's not the case. Yeah. And I wish more people would take the time to experience it, because it is such a different but a great vibe to be so close.
Yes. Yeah.
And to say, like, really, I get to sit this close to the guy that wrote It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere? Like, you can sit right there and listen to him.
Yeah, and I think too, so this kind of, the other thing I wanted to ask you about here, which is not a small question, but everybody is worried about the entrance of AI into our space. And that feeling of the writers' round closeness, small group, hearing people writing or, singing songs that they just wrote, those are the best, is like, they're making mistakes or forgetting words because they just wrote it yesterday and this is brand new. You cannot fake that. So I feel like that might be the corner that we all have to run to get away from what's coming, which is just everything's perfect all the time in mass quantities that you cannot consume all of. So have you seen that kind of shift happening where like people are...
I think people are going to be not like Milli Vanilli, but I think you're going to be found out, because if you're a bedroom creator and you keep putting out all this great music, and sometimes if you listen to, say, a podcast interview, it's almost what the person isn't saying more so than what they are saying that does start to raise those doubts. And if they're just a bedroom creator and they never go out and perform anywhere, now this is taking nothing away from EDM producers. Right, that's entirely different. But the people that are trying to do what you and I are talking about, they never go out and perform anywhere. They don't talk about band members. They don't talk about musicians that they used on their project. They don't talk about background vocalists that they brought in. They don't even talk about who produced it, because they just used ChatGPT or whatever. You go,
their laptop. Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna, people are gonna fall away really quick.
And I've seen that play out with a couple artists that, like, you see them on Instagram. Oh, I'm going to be at this place, and this place. And as that date gets closer, their posts get more desperate about there's still tickets available. And then, people pay all this money and they go to a show. Just because somebody popped off on Instagram and TikTok did not mean they were ready to go put on a 2+ hour show. Yeah, and people are getting babysitters and people are buying meals and, and you get there and it's like, this guy has 7 million followers on TikTok. And he's got 30 minutes of stuff he can do without his laptop, maybe. And so I feel like you can only burn so many of those bridges, like, for so long. So, but like I said, so I think AI is going to have a hard time competing with that.
Dare I say that the George Crofts and the Bruce Wawrzyniaks of the world may have a responsibility to sniff those people out and to ask those probing questions to where it's going to reveal that, okay, I haven't heard you talk about what kind of guitar you play. I haven't heard you talk about what kind of gear you use. What does your live rig look like? And all of a sudden, the cream will always rise to the top.
Yeah. I think of it like it's going to be like, I like to call it non-GMO music, where it's like people, you can always go to, you can always find the banana that looks exactly like the other banana that's not covered in glyphosate or whatever. Like it can look the same, but there's something about being like, no, this is a real artist that really did this. He really wrote this in his, bedroom when he was crying about something. Like, this is real human pain getting brought to you in song form. I think it'd be cool to find a way to like label that somehow as like, you know, like a check that you'd have to go through to be like, no, I didn't use AI for this at all.
Yeah, if you look at YouTube and the fact that they now have a little button that you're supposed to click.
Yes.
I think the problem is you're supposed to click it.
Yeah.
So somebody could be using AI until the cows come home and never checking that box, and people go, oh, it doesn't say anything about AI on there. Well, yeah. In that person's conscience,
yeah,
they know what really happened.
Yeah.
And so I fear, George, that the casual music listener who is just willing to settle for something that sounds decent, that they may make it tougher because they're not holding these creators to the standard that George and Bruce are. Maybe. And they're just accepting it and going, yeah, cool song. And if you told them, would you believe it if I told you that was created entirely by AI? I fear that they're going to say, it's a cool song though. I mean, you got to admit, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. You're missing a big part of this.
I think what's going to end up happening, this is just me, you know, predicting what's going to happen in front of this giant change that nobody can predict. So I'm probably wrong about this. But I think that people are leaning into live performance, that like, because we have, you know, click your fingers and we've got the 50s blues version of a 50 Cent song and it sounds awesome. And, you know, it's great for a video. You want to make a short to this like remix of a rap song that's in this, you know, new and interesting, you know, format. Great. But I don't need you to just listen to my stuff. I need you to come out to my show and I need you to, you know, buy my merch and interact with my stuff. And like, I don't think the person that's cranking out that AI song, they're not after the same thing from the audience. They don't need you to interact that hard. And so like, they're just out there for streaming numbers. Yep. And it's like, okay, maybe they can just have that. And like, they can't, no matter what they do, that person that's cranking out AI music all the time, I mean, unless they solve some serious problems, you're not going to draw a crowd to a show. You're not going to, you know, develop a loyal following that's there for the shared.
Yeah, they might be happy to be a bedroom creator.
Right, exactly,
I have no designs on trying to go out.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Is I don't think they're competing for that part of our space. I think they're just happy to crank out, you know.
Although as much as recording artists will complain about the 0.00001 that Spotify gives them, you are competing now for streams where you're saying, if I'm going to ever get any kind of check from Spotify, now there's only that much more music being jammed into it because AI is making it easier.
Yeah, that I think, I don't know what the solve for that is. I think the streaming revenue, it's already low, and I think it's going to go to zero, really. Like, I think we have to find a new way to generate. And I've talked to some other people about this too. Like, I don't think we have if you just came into the world right now and you just navigated the landscape, if you just came into the world right now and you know, had to like assess your surroundings and figure out how to navigate the landscape, you might make certain assumptions about the way things are. But I think we're like half out of a cocoon from like, we still haven't finished the process of getting away from vinyl records to whatever we're about to be, whatever the next thing is, whether it's you really can only make money by bringing people to your shows and selling your own merch and developing an audience. Like, that might be where we're going. And we're only halfway there. So a lot of the problems we're trying to solve are little flakes of things that are kind of fleeting. So it's like you see it even now, like we still call it albums. We still, you know, talk about singles. We still talk about, you know, like,
and vinyl has made a comeback.
Vinyl's making a comeback.
It has made a comeback.
Yeah. And that's really interesting to watch too, is like because it's a tangible thing that people can buy, and they're like but I've noticed I think I might've been talking to Don about this too, is like the way people do scheduling that, like if you have an album coming out, the way people drop albums and the way people, you know, do the marketing around that, those people are still selling as if they're selling records. And like the thing you were trying to solve back then was like, okay, we need people to go to the record store and we need them to spend their $10 or whatever on an album that they're then going to take home, put that album on their record player with all their friends there, and we're going to listen to records. And so for them to go spend their $10 and do those things, you got to give them enough songs to make that worth doing. And you got to make the songs enough of a quality to make that worth doing. And you have to have like, if that's the set of problems you're trying to solve, I need a person to go to a store, spend their money, take it home, and they're going to put it on a machine and listen with their friends. That's still the model that we're following, even though it's available immediately. People can listen to 3 seconds of it and skip it and go on to the next thing. Like the problems that the system is still trying to solve are no longer the biggest ones. And I think we're still trying to figure out what the best way is. Because like, I think that's why you're seeing now everybody's dropping singles all the time. And I think that might be the best way to do it, because you're trying to keep attention, versus.
I was very interested to hear a songwriter tell me on my podcast that they have been so impacted by streaming that the shift that they're making is, whereas before I didn't really go out and perform much, I really am just a songwriter. Like now they are going and getting on as many shows as they can, even if they have to travel. Once they've got the credentials and they've had as many cuts as they've had and as many hits as they've had, like they'll get paid for doing songwriter shows hundreds of miles away. But I thought that was interesting because I think we hear about this issue with streaming and how it doesn't really pay well, and we only think of recording artists and we don't think about the songwriters. And here's the songwriter saying, I'm all of a sudden having to kind of step out from behind the shadows and say, I'll go sit on a stool on a stage wherever, as long as I'm going to make some money doing that, because I ain't going to make too much money sitting at home.
I don't know. There's a great mystery there of like, where did all of that money go? Because, I was, when you're talking like guys that were professional songwriters, like that system used to exist when it's like I said, when people are going and buying a real album, the money from that album supported 3 different industries between writing, like the writers, the publishers, distributors, like everything that they had to go through to get that thing onto the radio. Even the radio now. It's like all of those, steps were funded by that $10 for the vinyl that you bought. And so when streaming was just like, oh yeah, that's no longer required, it just collapsed entire industries in the middle there. And it's like, because, those aren't things that are needed anymore. But it's like, where is that same amount of money being generated and that's just being kept by Apple or Spotify or whoever? Yeah. Or did we just find it where we actually don't have to generate that much money? We generate some and they still get all of that, but we don't actually need those industries in the same way. So they're kind of just getting left in the dust.
Well, the other big shift was, in the past it was write, record, tour that album, and then come back home and wash, rinse, repeat. And so then you'd start writing your next project, going and recording it, going out on tour. And now, because it has become a singles-driven industry, people are just dropping singles every month, and they go, well, I'm not really like going out to tour something. I'm just going to play a ton of shows and keep trying to play my newest song or maybe the next upcoming song. And so there's kind of a part of that that's been broken where you say, but there's money to be made out on the road, and yet you're so busy writing, recording, and playing locally to do some shows before you get back in and do the next one. Now, granted, obviously, you could write a whole batch of songs well in advance and record them all at once and then say, okay, now we're just going to release them on whatever schedule. But then you better be spending all that time planning out, well, where am I going so I have somewhere good to play that I'm going to get paid as these songs drop every month or every 6 weeks or whatever your schedule is.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that right now. The one that I've noticed is Ella Langley seems to be leaning into that strategy really hard, because she has dropped, the last 4 songs that she's dropped have been within a couple months of each other. And first of all, they're all really good. So like she has the talent box checked, and like she's got a lot of things going for her career wise. But I've noticed that there's not they could have done an album with the amount of good songs that they just dropped, but they're not doing that. They're dropping one at a time, and that girl is touring everywhere and making all the money doing it. And it's like that, but that only works for that top echelon of the industry anyway. But yeah, I think there's something to be learned from that. Like that we're, like I said, the old, hey, get 12 songs on an album. It's like, we're not trying to sell a $10 vinyl anymore. We're trying to get attention, and we're trying to get views, and we're trying to get streaming numbers. We're trying to get an audience built. Yeah, so I think we're going to see a lot more of that, of just kind of a trickle feed of good music instead of big projects.
Funny story about Ella Langley. I was supposed to interview her for my podcast. I want to say I want to say July of 2022, we were all at the Lake Martin Songwriters Festival in Alabama. And she was, the groundwork had been laid that we were going to do an interview. And then it was her husband got sick. And I think it was still kind of like the COVID hangover where COVID was still like, oh, better be careful, I got COVID. And so they left the festival to go back home to Nashville. Man. And I think we tried to reschedule at one point and couldn't. And then before you know it,
her star took off.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, that could be cool though. But yeah, it's a wild time to be in this industry and kind of try to navigate the new.
It's a wild time, and it's kind of the wild, wild west, because people are finding their way through it and saying like, okay, am I shifting to just putting out singles? How am I reacting to AI? How am I fighting? And so Spotify, people look to combat that. I had a guest on my show, Ted Andre, on episode 600, that they launched the Coda music app because they wanted to say, like, all right, everyone's tired of Spotify and they're not taking care of artists the way they should, but we also want to lay social media over streaming music so that everything is in one place instead of I'm listening on Spotify and now I'm going to go post something on Instagram and then over here I'm going to see if there's some way to comment or contact the artist. And so I like that people are reacting like Ted and his people did and said like, well, why don't we just come up with a new music? And so I forget what they call it, like social something. They're really trying to emphasize the social aspect. Yeah. So it is the wild, wild west, and people are making it up as they go along, which is interesting because then you start to see what's working and everybody moves that way. And the trends start to dictate like, hey, we're all going to go do this thing now. Yeah. And look at how TikTok has actually turned into a music discovery platform.
It really has. Yeah. I think it's going through some shifts now. I've noticed where like there's something big happening at TikTok. Like old things that used to work are no longer working, and they just changed owners and there's a bunch of algorithm stuff they're messing with. So I'm kind of hoping it's just a temporary them getting their bearings and then it'll be good again. But I'm a little worried that TikTok's going to stop being that helpful and that all that work that people are putting in. I don't know how long that's going to be there in the same helpful way. I mean, I could be totally wrong about that. We're going to keep doing it, but I'm a little nervous. I see it going in a direction that doesn't seem helpful. But Instagram is not that way. I think Instagram seems to still have the legs as far as promoting artists and stuff. But that would be like an artist specific social media platform that people know they're going for music and to support artists would be.
But I always say that, like you're saying about TikTok, and yes, they do have new ownership, but it never ceases to amaze me that platforms can get really big and then all of a sudden one day they go, nah, we're done. Like there used to be one called Blab back in the day, and Blab got so popular. People would spend hours on there, and I'm not exaggerating. The two guys who ran it, they literally one day just put up a message on there saying, this has been a lot of fun, but we want to move on to other things. And it was gone. And I recently had to ask somebody, is Clubhouse even still a thing? Clubhouse had its heyday. Yeah. Where everybody was on Clubhouse, and it still exists, but you never hear anybody talking about it. So, could the day come when someone saying like, oh, is that even still around? It could. There's been too many instances.
Yeah, I think like MySpace is the biggest example of that. That guy, who was the guy that owned MySpace? Was his name Tom from MySpace? Yeah. He pulled his shoot at the perfect moment. Like that. Yeah. I've seen all kinds of hilarious memes and stuff, like especially when Zuckerberg is getting grilled in front of Congress and stuff, and there's just a picture of Tom where it's like when he sold out at the right time. But yeah, it's like I see, it's like keep using it. It's still useful, but none of these things are. I don't think any of them are going to be the same 20 years from now. Like who knows what we're looking at? So it's an ever changing landscape, but it's fun to fight with and it's fun to try to navigate. And it's great to have, people like you around to help artists and kind of bring in some reinforcements, because it feels like quite the lonely battle sometimes.
Yeah. And it gives me a lot of joy to work with somebody who will tell me, I have an author client that just started working with us, and she told me right away that it means so much to her to not be alone and to know that she's got people in her corner. And that just really makes it so much more rewarding that you're going to help the person, but when you see how much it means to them, you say, okay, let's do this. Let's go.
Man, that's awesome. Well, I know you've got a plane to catch, and I appreciate you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this. It was great to finally meet you in person.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, everybody, we'll see you next week.